Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's we'll be comparing the Range Rover Velar to the Genesis GV80. Before we get in this video, I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to the Genesis of Linden for giving me some time with this GV80. I'll include a link to their website in the description down below. Also include a link to my car buying guide. Let's get into it. Under the hood, we have a twin-turbo 3.5-liter V6 that goes through an 8-speed automatic transmission. Fuel economy 16 around town, 22 on the highway, with power outputs being 375 horsepower and then 391 pound-feet of torque. Now, powering this Velar is a turbo 2-liter 4-cylinder that puts out 247 horsepower and then 269 pound-feet of torque. Fuel economy is 22 around town, 26 on the highway. Before we move forward with this review, I do want to mention if you want to see more videos just like this, then I recommend you subscribe because I post content every single day. Now, Genesis obviously took a lot of style cues from Bentley with the GV80, or just with their whole lineup in general. I think it looks really sharp. You got the Genesis logo with the wings there, the split light design, really intricate grille. It screams luxury. Definitely a little bit over the top, but still looks great. Now with the Range Rover, it's a lot more minimalist. You can definitely tell what it is right off the bat when you look at it, because Range Rover has a very distinctive style, but it kind of looks like a mini sport. Now the Velar is 21s, whereas the Genesis has 20-inch wheels. I can see both of them are pretty fancy with the overall design. I like the little lights there on the side. And then I like this with the Range Rover. I think it looks really cool. And then notice here with the mirror caps, they're actually shockingly similar. I wonder if they get them from the same mirror manufacturer. They're very, very similar. Now you've got regular door handles on the Genesis, pop out on the Range Rover. Here's your side profile with the GV80, and then here's the side profile with the Velar. Now let's compare the cargo areas. So taking a look at the Velar, it goes back pretty far. You also have a cargo cover built in from the factory, and then you guys can see a little 12-volt here in the back as well. Now one thing, it's got a sloped kind of like coupe-like design in the rear, so that does get in the way of the vertical space a bit. Now this leads us over to the GV80. So this one actually has a third row, funny enough. You can get it without the third row, by the way. But if you get the third row, you get cup holders and all of that. And notice with the seats, raise and lower them. And then you actually have functions here in the back for that. With the second row, you can only lower them down, for those of you wondering. And they actually get their own climate zone too. That's interesting. But yeah, similar storage space in terms of the depth, but because it's a traditional SUV style, you can get a GV80 coupe, by the way, but because this one's the SUV, got a little bit more vertical. Now taking a look at the space here in the Velar, pretty good with the leg room. I got knee space and everything that I need. And then we've got vents here in the back, heated seats. Also note that that's where the seat distance should be. This is pushed back a little bit for the memory function. And then the seats themselves, really nice trim, perforated all down the center. And then nice trim on the door panel as well, and then pretty good headroom despite the kind of coupe design. Can't talk today apparently. Now in the back of the GV80, it's pretty similar in terms of the spacing. We've got heated seats here for the back, little charging ports and everything down below. Really nice trim on the seats themselves. I think they did a great job with that whole setup. And look at the fancy trim on the door panel, very stylized. And then you do have a sunshade for the rear passengers too. And we'll start up the Velar. It's got this nice digital gauge cluster here in the center. I like the overall theme. Again, Range Rover's going for minimalist with everything. We do have a heads-up display with this. Nice paddle shifters there on the back of the steering wheel, practical controls on the front. Everything's very legible and just makes sense. I like the trim on the steering wheel too. And then here's the infotainment system. So if we pop it into reverse, you've got a 360 camera. It's always a nice feature. Everything's built into the screen with this. So if you want to change like the drive mode, for example, and adjust the suspension, which I'm not sure why that didn't go there. But yeah, if you want to adjust the suspension up and down, because it does have air suspension, everything's going to be in the screen, because down here, yep, just storage in the shifter. And then you can see the cup holders, and then we've got the little center console with the double lid setup, and the nice trim across the dash. And then we do have a panoramic sunroof. Now let's pop on the GV80. So I think still pretty cool style. Now they did do the giant screen across the dash, so I would say that this isn't quite as nicely integrated as the Range Rover, but still really nice. Heads-up display, and then see Genesis there in the center of the steering wheel. Got nice paddle shifters there on the back of the steering wheel. And then look at the trim across the dash, the wood trim. I think that looks really nice. And then this isn't quite physical, right, because it's still screen, but you kind of have like this readily available right in front of you all the time versus diving into menus in the Range Rover. And then you got your phone charging pad, and then you actually have more physical controls down below. dial shifter right next to the infotainment. They're both, that's funny. Anyways, drive mode select here. We also have a center diff lock, which just makes it so the all-wheel drive system will split power even front to rear. And then you've got kind of like this double lid center console. Nice seats as well. I'll say some of the trim in the Land Rover does feel a bit more premium. This is still like very nice feeling and looking, but the Land Rover definitely just feels a little bit more premium, like I said. And then we got a double sunroof situation, so one in the front and then one in the back. Now when it comes to pricing, these both sticker for about $76,000. That's why I picked these out to compare, because they're pretty much the same price. Let's take them out and see how they perform. We're gonna set off in the Genesis first, then we'll drive the Range Rover second. And this is an interesting comparison, but I know there's a lot of people that do compare. I always ask the Genesis dealer what people trade in, and they say from all sorts of luxury manufacturers. The big one right now is actually Audi. They're getting a lot of Audi people into these Genesis, and so if you guys want me to do any Genesis Audi comparisons, I don't know how I'd put them together right now, but I can try to work on something down the road. Just don't know how many people are looking for that. But yeah, super smooth. Now, Genesis focuses on luxury first, performance second. Something you have to remember when you drive one of these cars, because I think that people get in these and they are, you know, again, they're comparing to Audi, BMW, Mercedes, all of that. And all those manufacturers kind of focus on, Mercedes kind of 50-50, but BMW and Audi kind of focus on performance first and luxury second. Now, the first thing you notice about the GV80 is it's so comfortable. The ride is really nice, and when you go over bumps, the dampening's great, so it just leads to a nice luxury experience. And it's got pretty good low-end torque, so you just kind of lightly get into the pedal. You don't really ever go full throttle often. Still do it here, but you can see, get into it, and it's got a wave of power. It moves, but that's kind of not the best way to drive this car, in my opinion. The best way to drive this car is just to kind of lightly get into the pedal and just let the torque do its thing. Yeah, this handles so well. It's comfortable, but it still is sharp enough to where you don't feel like you're gonna tip over or anything like that. Yeah, it's very nice. So the GV80 is a great luxury car with a little bit of a performance side gig. That's the way that I'd look at it. Man, am I even gonna fit in here? It is a big SUV as well. There's no way. Yeah, there's no way. I think I could, like, very, very tightly squeeze, but yeah, I'm not gonna risk it. Not my $76,000 car. But yeah, as I was saying, it's just a nice luxury SUV. Now I gotta do this thing. Why did I do this to myself, folks? I was trying to take a shortcut, and this is what I get for taking a shortcut. Boom. At least the 360 camera is great. Yeah, it's just smooth. So, let's go pop into the Velar. Well, let us set off in the Velar. Let's see how it compares. Right off the bat, believe it or not, even though it says air suspension, it seems like the Genesis was a little bit more controlled over the bump. Stayed just kind of a little bit more planted. But this is still really good. Got a big difference in powertrains. You can get an inline-six Velar, but more money. Range Rover prices themselves above all of the cars that people compare them against. And you know, Range Rover, I'm sure, would say that we're not comparable. And it's like, well, people are always going to compare cars. People are always going to compare cars. Don't care who you are. People even compare against Rolls-Royce that are shopping. Up top, right? So, it handles really well. Good torque. Obviously, you know, we don't have nearly as much power, but still a nice setup. You know, kind of lean towards the Genesis with this particular comparison. I actually prefer Range Rover styling, and I prefer their interior layout. Believe it or not, I'm not a touchscreen guy. I've said this time and time again. I am not a touchscreen guy, but this is user-friendly enough that I don't mind it. And I do like a lot of the driving dynamics of the Velar. The Genesis is just, the tuning is so good with that car. And I think it just does a better job at just being a luxury car in terms of how the interior looks and feels. Like this has very, like I said, the materials feel kind of higher quality in this and everything, but the Genesis is more stylized. So, but maybe that stylized look won't age as well down the road, right? It'll kind of look funky in a few years, but I don't know. They're both really nice, right? So it's like, if you can afford either, it's like it's a nice car. But I think the Genesis is better value. And I think this is something that, this is just my 2 cents. I think that Range Rover, at the top end, they do such a good job. And they really do beat out a lot of the other manufacturers. But at this entry level, right, the entry level Range Rovers, you know, Discovery, Sport, Velar, all of that, I think that they need to I don't know, change things up a little bit, maybe bring down the prices a bit on these, because they just don't have the same pull as the big bad boy Range Rovers. But let me know your thoughts.